Hello, I'm Dr. Leonard Favar, and I want to welcome you to this lecture we're going to do today. Talking about stress management, and my background is actually in industrial psychology. My doctorate is in psychology, and so specifically more towards business psychology, so this is a perfect opportunity for me to take the time to do this. Before we get started, let's just take a moment and pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we just ask that you open our minds and our hearts to those things that you want us to learn today, to take away from this moment today. So be with us in this class, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. I just want to take a moment and introduce Dr. Croker. He's going to be helping me out today. I don't know if many of you know Dr. Croker or have ever actually seen his face, but he's the dean of your whole program. So this is an important man. And he's actually going to be doing slides for you today, and I think that's pretty impressive. So thanks, Dean, for helping me out. Just in case, from time to time, technology, when we have slides, sometimes computers break down. You know technology, and just he'll deal with that, and don't worry about it. And my job is to try to talk to you about this issue today, about stress management. And so that's what we're going to focus on. Actually, we're going to focus on the issue called psychological hardiness, which is directly related to stress management. So we're going to take a look at our first slide today. If it'll advance. Yeah, there we go. All right, psychological hardiness. One of the things that you should have picked up by now, and perhaps this is the first time you're hearing about it, is the issue or the difference between what we call eustress and distress. Most of the time, people just talk about stress. Hey, how are you feeling today? I'm stressed. What's going on? Oh, I'm stressed. And we always talk about stress. But stress is a pretty generic term. There's actually two specific types of stress that most of us deal with. The first, I'll actually use the second one, is distress. That's usually what we mean by stress. The kids are screaming, I'm stressed. You know, I've got homework due tonight. I got to watch this lecture and I don't have enough time to do it. That's called stress, and that's usually what we mean by distress. It's things that take away from us, the way our perspectives, things that bring us down. Now, eustress is another type of stress, and eustress is more the positive stress. See, we don't think about that very often, but there's a lot of positive stress that happens in our life. That's the kind of stress that helps us to do better at times. I know I coached for years with some soccer players, and I know as a coach, many times what I would do is I'd get them hyped up, you know, make them think about the game, what the game really means. And that's really stress. But it's good stress because it actually made them perform better. In the classroom, sometimes I'll talk about how important this test coming up really is. You know, and people get, oh no, but it makes them perform better many times. And actually, in some of your reading, you may have already come across what we call the inverted U. This inverted U. And as you look at this inverted U, what we're talking about is performance and arousal, or what we will call today stress. And what science has showed us is that as stress is added to our life, there's a certain amount of stress that actually helps us perform better. Performance goes up as that stress is introduced into our life. There is a point, however, in which too much stress actually begins to make our performance go down. You see that, and they call that the inverted U. You should come across this quite a bit in any of your stress-related studies. What we would say is that this tends to be eustress, and this is distress. Now, all of this is stress, but as long as it's positive, it's eustress. When it becomes negative, it becomes distress. Now, both of those things work together all the time as you're dealing with stress. But that kind of helps you gain kind of an idea. Now, what we want to do in this stress management class is talk about how do we actually allow this top part of the curve to increase so that as I deal with stress, stress becomes a positive thing in my life. It's something that helps me perform better and to do better rather than becoming distress, which actually takes away from how I am performing. So we're going to move to the next slide. There's some research done by two researchers, and I'm going to mess up their names big time, but Kabasa and Mahdi, and they came up with this concept called psychological hardiness. Now, when they're talking about psychological hardiness, what they're talking about are people that have a certain ability to handle stress. These are people in business, and most of you are coming out of either health or organizational business type leadership, perhaps that's what you're looking to get into. What they're talking about are people in these industries who experience stress, but when they experience stress, they take it as a very positive thing because they have good, what they call psychological hardiness, all right? Good psychological hardiness. What they found in their research is that healthy individuals were people that were, number one, committed. They were committed. Meaning that they were committed to their lives in the sense that they saw that their life had meaning and value and purpose. And so they were committed to engage in the things that happened in their life. And not everything that came their way, they were like, oh no, what's happening now? I'm stressed. Rather, they saw it as, oh, look what's happening now. Hey, I'm going to engage this. I'm going to get involved. The other thing they found is that people with good psychological hardiness had a sense of control. I don't know if you've studied yet, but they talk about an internal locus of control and an external locus of control. Really what that means is some people believe that their lives are totally dependent on what happens outside of them. It's luck, it's destiny, it's fate that things have happened. When you live that kind of world where it's an external locus of control, what happens is you begin to feel like you're not in control of your life, so you can't determine anything. And so when stress happens, it happens to you, and you feel like you're burdened by it. People with an internal locus of control, or what they're talking about here, a sense of control, are those people who feel like, hey, I'm the one who decides how to feel about things. I'm the one who decides what things to be involved in or what things not to be involved in. I'm the one who decides how to think about these things. And that's what they mean by good sense of control, or what we would call in stress management, internal locus of control. The other thing is that they perceived that change was a challenge rather than something that was trying to stop them. And so people with good psychological hardiness are people who see change as challenge. And I remember back to the scriptures. I think it's James 1 that talks about, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face challenges of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Now, it's a scripture passage that speaks directly to this issue, meaning that from James' point of view, he was saying, you know what? When things come your way, challenges come your way, what you need to view it as is that God is seeing that you are ready to be challenged to the next step in your journey. And so he allows these challenges to occur so that as we work through the challenge, as we partner with him and work through the challenge, we're becoming more mature, more complete. A good psychologically hardy person would see that any challenge, any kind of change, any kind of stress is a way for me to be challenged to be a better person, which is exactly what James was talking about. You know, a lot of other of us may see that every challenge is, oh no, another challenge, not another challenge. Oh, God must not like me. Why, God, are you doing this to me? Somebody who has good psychological hardiness would rather say, or are more apt to say, oh, God is challenging me. I may not like the challenge, but sweet. God sees me as somebody who's a maturing person, and maybe he thinks I'm ready for this challenge. So, God, bring it on. Let's make it happen. Depends on how you look at it. And that's called psychological hardiness. Now, what's interesting is we find that psychological hardiness is actually fostered best in the family. So people who came from intact family groups, younger, tend to have a better sense of psychological hardiness. Now, that doesn't mean if you come from, I am from a broken home, multiple homes, and so I was not as good psychological hardy, but you can develop it, and that's the important thing. You can develop psychological hardiness, which is really what all this lecture is about, is how do you develop it, how do you grow in it, and so on. So that's a little bit about psychological hardiness. Let's take a look at where we're going to be going today. We're actually going to be looking at this from two different viewpoints. A professional viewpoint, because I want to make sure we talk about how this applies to your professional world, and a personal viewpoint. How does it apply to you directly as an individual in your day-to-day interactions? When we look at it professional, what we're talking about is what is my task as a fellow coworker, as a manager, as a boss, as an entrepreneur. What is my job relative to other people? So what am I doing good at? What can I improve? These are questions we're going to ask ourselves today. On the personal side, it's what's my task relative to my own journey towards psychological hardiness. How can I better myself? How can I improve myself? How can I improve my family? So we're going to be focused on both sides of this view as we work through this lecture today. Let's go to the next slide. From the professional side, we're going to be talking about something called path-goal theory. Now, this is a good leadership thing, all right? Basically, path-goal theory says, I'm a boss, I'm a fellow coworker. Let's even talk about, I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm a brother or sister. Path-goal theory says that my job to be a good leader, to be a good partner, is to give support to those around me and to remove obstacles so that other people can achieve what it is that they have to do. So like if I, well, Dr. Croker is here helping me out today, you know, and so in him helping me out, I asked him to advance the slide. Well, to do that, I needed to make sure he had the support material and everything that he needed to do it, and to remove any obstacles in his way to make it happen. That's good path-goal theory, all right? So basically, it's like, here's the path that people walk on. I send them to walk. My job as a leader is to remove obstacles out of the path so that they can achieve the goal that I want them to. It's called path-goal theory. Now, obviously, if you think about stress, stress is directly related to this. Because if I have someone who I'm working with and I say, hey, I need you to go do something, but I don't help them in any way, every time they run into an obstacle, they're going to be stressed because they're not going to be able to get it done. And then me as their boss, what's that going to cause for me? Then I get stressed because they're not doing their job, and then everybody's stressed, and then I'm firing people, and then everyone's stressed, you know? So path-goal theory. Remove the obstacles, everyone's happy. Okay. Now, on this side, on the personal side, what I want to take a closer look at is this idea that comes out of Romans 12, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. When we talk about stress, though it's very related to the work that we do today, day by day, it's really a personal issue. We deal with stress because I feel stressed. I feel stressed. And so what I want to talk about is, how do I transform my mind? How do I transform my mind? How do I look at Mark 12 and Luke 10 that talk about love the Lord your God with your heart, mind, soul, and strength? Because I tell you, if we could live lives where we would love God and love our neighbors as ourselves, I don't think we'd be as stressed as we feel all the time. If we could truly find that. So part of the journey is understanding how it is that we develop that. Now, next slide. Let's skip this one. I talked about that. All right, so how are we going to do this? Now, you'll have to stop the lecture right here if you've never seen The Wizard of Oz, just so you know. Because if you've never seen it, you won't understand anything that I'm going to talk about next. Because this is a unique journey that we're going to take, using The Wizard of Oz as a backdrop. Now, I chose Wizard of Oz because it's a story that most everyone in America is familiar with. I mean, most of us grew up on it as children. We've watched it. It comes out every year, you know, multiple times on TNT or something like that. And we get to watch that film. And so most of us understand the main characters. Now, if you don't, pause and either go on, you can get on, I'm sure, YouTube or somewhere else, and watch pieces of the film or read a short biography. Actually, we'll make sure there's a link to a short biography of the Wizard of Oz so you can read about it. Now, if you're good, let's move forward. If not, pause for just a minute, pause and come back. Okay, welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk about this journey. So to talk about, and what we're doing is, how do I develop psychological hardiness? How do I do it? How do I reduce stress by increasing my ability to handle stress? Is what we're going to talk about. All right, first slide. All right, and you can stay right where you're at. I'm going to Dorothy. All right, I have these little cardboard characters. They're just so fun. I've got to use them. Dorothy. Dorothy is the every person character in our story. All right, and so as we talk about this journey, there's going to be two characters we always come back to. One of which is always Dorothy. Because in the story, you are the Dorothy. If you're talking it from a personal basis, you're making this journey. If you're looking at it from a professional basis, Dorothy might be the person that you're working with, all right? But she obviously is the main character. Sorry, guys, you have to do the whole blue and white dress thing. You are Dorothy for this journey, all right? Now, let's talk about Dorothy. Dorothy in the story is this gal from Kansas. Haha, that's where Central Christian is. From Kansas, and what's her life like? It is a boring life. It is what it is. And she's stressed, mind you, because no one ever listens to her. She doesn't get to do the things that she wants to do, all these chores and so on that she has to deal with. To her, life has become very black and white. And it's funny because the film is actually black and white to begin with. And she just complains about life. She even sings this song about someday over the rainbow, and what she's doing is she's dreaming of what life would be if it was just better, if it wasn't here, if it wasn't now. What could life be like? And how many times have you felt the same way? That point in your life where you're just like, I just don't like life. I don't like what's going on around me. Perhaps even some of these courses that you're taking and this degree you're seeking is to find that over the rainbow spot, somewhere in your life. Understand that. And so that's where Dorothy is as we go through this journey. Well, come to find out in Dorothy's journey, something happens. I'll go to the next slide. Oh, I talked about this. Life in Kansas. Just normal every day. All right, let's move on. Okay, a tornado comes. All right, here's Dorothy and her happy little life, well, not happy, unhappy little life in Kansas. And this tornado comes. In our story of developing psychological hardiness, the tornado is any type of crisis or change that occurs in your life. Now, let me be very careful here. Sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. Getting married is a good example of a tornado that's a positive thing, all right? But it definitely is a tornado. I just did a wedding this weekend. And let me tell you, the bride's stressed, and the groom's stressed, and the mother of the bride is really stressed, and everyone's stressed, but everyone's happy. So understand that sometimes happy events can bring just as much stress as not so happy events, like a divorce, or break up in a relationship, a death of a family member, or a close friend, losing your job. Those are all examples of negative things that happen. Even this class, which is a positive thing, right, could be causing you stress because of the transition. But here's the point. What happens is this crisis uproots what's normal for you, what you experience. Like for Dorothy, her little happy black and white life on the Kansas farm, suddenly she's torn up from that and whisked away in the tornado. That's the crisis. Now, if you were writing this out, if I had you write this out as an assignment, and maybe you will be, what would be your crisis? What's a crisis that you have went through recently, positive or negative, or maybe it's a crisis coming up? New job, new family, new home, maybe losing a job. What is that crisis? Even becoming a student again, what is that like, or for the first time? So identify the crisis, because we'll use that as we talk through that. All right, let's move to the next slide. Now, let's understand something. For those of you who know the story of the Wizard of Oz, one of the things that we know is after the tornado occurs and she comes down and she lands in Oz, she starts off in the house. And one of the most terrific things, and I remember seeing this is one of the first times that color was ever used in a film. And the whole film starts in black and white. And I remember the first time that door opened. And as that door opened, suddenly you had color outside. Black and white inside the house, color outside of the house. And what we're going to talk about is all throughout this journey that we take, that house, we'll call that our safe environment. And what I mean by this is, and now again, I'm a psychologist, so I deal with this all the time. When people go through crisis and change, and they land in a new place, sometimes they never leave the safety of what's familiar to them, even if what's familiar to them is not good, broken down. That house, when it landed, it was crashed. It was ruined. But you know what? At least Dorothy knew where the kitchen was. She knew. It may be destroyed, but she knew where those things were. And so she might have chosen never to leave the house, because at least she knows what's the house. And this is interesting. In psychology, I see it all the time. People who have great opportunity in front of them, there's stress, yeah. It's change, yeah. But they don't have the hardiness to move forward. And so what they do is, even though the life that they have now is broken down, they hang on to it. And that's where psychoses come from. This idea of holding on to things, even though they're broken, and not moving forward, which many times actually adds stress to your life. Because now you're maintaining the facade of everything being good when it's really, really not. So we'll refer to that from time to time. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to put my little character people over here. Okay. All right. Listen, Munchkins. All right. So, Dorothy in her house, in crisis, in change. That house slams down, and like I said, and you can see, I don't know how clearly you can see, but the house is over here in the corner, all broken up. All right. And she opens that door, and this colorful land opens up before her. I mean, it's weird. There's color and weird things and weird plants and weird people, and they sing songs, which is really obnoxious. You know, it's different. Everything is different. Now again, Dorothy was faced with a choice. Does she run back into her black and white house because it's what's familiar with her? Or what she has in front of her is the opportunity to develop psychological hardiness, to respond to the stress as a challenge to do something better. And so she steps out into this new land. And look, it happens to us all the time. Every year here on campus, when we bring new freshmen in, when you get a chance to come out here for graduation or something like that, or just to visit, you'll notice that we have things like we eat in the BSC, or you go downstairs and relax in the TD. Well, it's funny to watch new students come in because they're like, where do I eat? And of course the seniors are like, over in the BSC. Where's the BSC? What's the BSC? Because they don't know it stands for Broadhurst Student Center, and that's where we eat, and the TD stands for Tiger Den. And what happens is whenever we enter into a new experience, there's a learning curve that has to happen because of this Munchkin Land effect. Everything's new. Do you ever, I think it was a year, 2 years ago, I landed in the hospital. That was my crisis event, and I landed in the hospital. Well, here I was surrounded by people dressed weird because they had green garments on, you know, little hats, and they were talking weird language, stat, and I'm like, what? I don't understand what you guys are talking about. And they did things weird, and they had their own schedule, and they had their own food, and all that kind of stuff. It was my Munchkin Land experience because it was so different. And that's what happens. Usually this is what causes people, here's our Dorothy character, this is what causes people to either go forward and develop psychological hardiness or run back in their house because they feel like it's safe. The problem with safe is it doesn't allow us to grow. And that's what I want to challenge you with this issue of stress management. Stress, when it's seen as a positive thing, allows us to grow forward. So here she is in Munchkin Land with all these new experiences. Well, who shows up? Let's see. Glenda. Let me go get Glenda here. Glenda. All right. Now, if you ever watch the movie, here's the funny thing about Glenda. She doesn't do anything. I mean, seriously, she doesn't. She sits there like this with her wand. A lot. She does that a whole lot. She doesn't actually do anything, but she's important to the story. Why? Well, it depends. If you're looking at this from the personal point of view, where you are Dorothy, then Glenda represents the friend that comes along to help you through the journey. Why do I feel like I'm playing with Barbies? Anyway, this person. Okay, now if you're talking that you are looking at this from a professional standpoint, well then, Dorothy is the person you're helping, and you, gloriously, are the Glenda character helping that person along in the journey. Does that make sense? So you're kind of that friend. Now, what's great about Glenda is it's right, she really doesn't do anything. But the most important thing that she does is she gives Dorothy a vision. Let's talk about that. Let's move to the next slide. The yellow brick road. Perhaps, and I'm going to pull the camera over here for just a minute because I want to talk about this yellow brick road issue for just a moment. When we talk about the yellow brick road, and this is one of the most important parts, I think, of this presentation, dealing with stress specifically, is the issue of what is your yellow brick road. See, for Dorothy knew she wanted to get home. Glenda had to tell her how to do that. Well, you need to get to Oz. But to get to Oz, you have to follow the yellow brick road. Okay? Remember that part of the story. Well, when we talk about the Oz, the castle of Oz, and the yellow brick road, what we're talking about really are values. Values. And there's two types of values that are going to be very important for you to reduce the amount of stress that you have in your life. Or let me rephrase that, to be able to deal with the stress that you have in your life in a positive way. The first is what we call a terminal value. Terminal value. A terminal value, think of it as the end. Terminal, end, okay, end. What's your end value? What is it that you're trying to go for? That's your end value. So, like if you want to get a degree, that's an end value, a terminal value. The castle, getting to Oz, was the terminal value. Now this is so important because if you don't know where you're going, you're going to do a whole lot of traveling, but you're not going to know in what direction to go. That causes stress, or at least distress, because you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. Why am I doing this? I don't know. You know, when you get your mail and you take all 10 things in the house and half of them have nothing to do with you, but you take them in anyway because it's my mail. But then you look at all these things you can't get because this is an advertisement for a new car, and this is an advertisement for rent to own, and you begin to get stressed like, oh, I don't have these things. I don't have these things. And it causes distress. Well, having a good idea